pros and cons of hiring a virtual assistant to make calls for you.
So I'm gonna answer it from a coach's perspective. Here's the challenge. I've probably coached between 400 and 500 people a little over 10 years now. And how often does this work? It's very, 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 very seldom, and it can also be a little bit costly. Not always financially, because I know sometimes it's like, well, I could get somebody from this third world country that I paid like, 42 cents, for a day, kind of a thing, and a Snickers bar. The problem though is the quality. And the quality in regards to the leads that are coming in from these VAs, it's so poor. That's the downfall of it, because if you're not going to do it and you're trying to work on your skills, yet you're trying to rely on somebody else to do this, it just doesn't always work. And then also the other part of it too is you have to be careful with the image, because we're a very image-based business where it can also work against you. I've had some agents where they send me recordings and then the person goes, Loida with who? I'd never do business with her. Tell her to get me off the list, blah, blah, blah. And the next thing you know, don't do business with Loida. So it can be a little bit expensive from that direction. Now, let me speak from the other side. Once you get in a position, you start to build up yourself as an individual, you can now start to build an organic team, show them, have them work on their skills. And then now you can actually start to incorporate like a VA, where now they might represent 5 or 10% of the business model, where I know some of you, what you're trying to do is you're trying to cut corners and you're trying to get them to be 80, 90% of your business, which does not work that way.
Yes. And to add on to that, I hear a lot of newer agents that maybe are doing this part-time. They think, you know what, well, I'm just going to hire someone overseas to make the phone calls for me. And then what ends up happening is exactly what you described. And first of all, let me ask you this, for those of you that are thinking this, who's going to train that person that English is probably their second language on how to handle objections, on how to communicate correctly, on their tonality? Remember, they're probably getting paid hourly, or maybe like every 2 weeks. They have a set amount that they're getting paid. So their motivation for maybe getting you appointments, it might not be that high, because as long as they're putting in the work, they probably don't even care. And then aside from that, once, let's say they do get a lead that is sent your way, are you as an agent prepared and ready to be able to convert that lead when you have no experience really talking to people? So these are just a few things that I want you to think about. And another question regarding this that I want to ask you, Robert, is let's say that there's maybe a veteran agent that's been in the business 5-6 years, they're doing very well, and now they're thinking about hiring a virtual assistant to make circle prospecting phone calls. What would you recommend, or what are your thoughts on that?
It can be, at that point in time, goes back to a little bit of what I was mentioning. It can be effective at that point in time. But the key is that this VA has to be a smaller percentage of the business. It's got to be something where it's the 5, the 10, maybe the 25% of your business model. I don't want to come across from a direction of, yes, a VA is absolutely great. It's a perfect way to, generate business, because that creates an enabled environment, especially for some of the agents that are not doing high level of production. But if it's an established agent, doing 20, 30, 40 deals a year, and then they get a VA and the VA is generating 2, 3, 5 deals a year, cool, awesome. As long as the cost factor is worth its time. So I just want to make sure that there's pros, and of course there are cons based on that.